Hey, so yeah, welcome everyone to the tooling group meeting. So we're here to discuss things, everything that revolves around tooling using Node.js. So this was a very much a user land kind of inspired working group at its inception, right? Like a place where authors, maintainers, and the users can come to and talk about our pains and propose solutions and new stuff, right? Like yeah,
examples?
yeah, we've done a lot of yeah. Let's start with Ethan here, who ended the last one, right? Yeah, the most recent.
Recursive stuff.
Yeah.
So I think userland. Everyone has wanted to be able to recursively traverse a directory, and there is 4 or 5 different packages all that did the exact same thing in different ways, and everyone seemed to either write the code themselves a million times or use one of these random dependencies. And I think motivation was can we just add this to core? It was a little bit harder than originally suspected because of the complexity of FS in core, which is one of the oldest APIs in Node, if not the oldest. And so it's just like, it took a little bit to get there, but we did. And I think actually one thing that came of that we might want to dive into is the biggest blocker on the whole project, or the contribution, was at first, what API do we even want to land? That we unblocked that pretty quickly with just land anything. Land the simplest thing, and we'll iterate from there. Cool, problem solved. But then I'm implementing it. It works on my machine. It works on all of the normal machines, so Linux, Windows, Mac, even some of the more niche things. But Smart OS and AIX, the only 2 where it failed. I don't even know what these things are. I don't even know how to run it. And I couldn't find someone for the longest time. In fact, it was a whole year ago, I think I brought up, like, hey guys, I can't finish this. I don't know what to do. Can someone help me? And someone's like, oh yeah, like let me help you. They were not much help. And then I waited another couple months and I revisited it and I was like, okay, someone help me. And I tweeted about it. No one said anything. And then eventually, I believe his name is Moshe. Or at least Moshlo on GitHub. He actually was he sat down and paired with me for like 4 hours. And he's in Israel, I think. So totally international, awful time zones. But we spent 4 hours and we figured out the one problem. And then there was a small change that needed to be made. And next thing you know, it lands. And it's one of those, like, I think the biggest learning there is, why the heck are we, like, what's the Smart OS thing? And, like, why was that such a blocker? And, like, if someone's not an expert in Smart OS, or if we don't have someone who can actually run one of those systems and, like, debug on it, then, like, what are we doing trying to...
Like, why is it supported?
Why is this supported? And why...
Because it's not supported, basically.
Yeah, because it's not exactly, and it's not...
Or if it's not what we were testing.
But if a potential contributor who has every intent on doing the right thing, wanting to test against the matrix and build for those environments, can't find a machine or can't get access to a machine, and I know you're a smart person, like you will find, and we're probably having a hard time finding like an environment for you to like reproduce that issue. If we don't have those tools, then how can we expect to be building for those platforms? Yeah.
Can I ask, have we done any of the iteration you mentioned? And if so, has this come up as a repeated problem?
So in this feature in particular, I followed it up almost immediately with another pull request that improves the algorithm that's being used. And at least so far, I don't believe it has tripped up in those same systems. Interestingly enough, those systems did catch a very weird edge case that only happened on those systems. But it's a kind of fault where, to get technical, it's like essentially it came down to an issue with stat. Like when you run stat on a file system object, those systems basically don't give you any information. versus every other system gives you information when you run stat on file system objects. So that's I guess a real edge case that actually our file system code is very complex as a result, because we need to support that niche edge case. And it's like, okay, actually my code was wrong. Actually, I wasn't considering this edge case. That's not documented in our code. That has no clear signal. It's one of those ones where even the people I was asking all these questions for, no one knew that. And we had to rediscover that edge case. Now that I know it, it's obvious now. It's one of those, okay, I have that experience where that is hit. But the go back to it is, if I was any other contributor who got hit that blocker and wasn't as invested in this community, I would have walked away forever ago, and we would have never have had this feature, and it would probably still be sitting incomplete on a pull request.
So I'll add, we do have a procedure, maybe needs better publication, but you can get access to any of our platforms from the build working group.
Yes, that process, someone, I think I literally wrote in our Slack channel, how do I get access to one of these things? And the replies I got were, just go ask in the repo. And I was like, nothing in the repo says that. Nothing in the build or there's no documentation that says if you need access to a certain OS or build system or anything, there is no formal process unless the contributor.
It is written down in the build. There's a process written down in the build working group for how we give out access and the requirements. I know. Yeah. I'm not saying. I'm saying it is documented in the build working group, but I said in the beginning, could be used better publication.
Is there any documented process for what is and is not supported platforms and how to make changes to those?
There is a list I think this one is actually in building in the main repo. There's tier 1 through tier 1, 2, 3 through tier 3, and I think experimental. So SmartOS is at most tier 2.
SmartOS contains Node version 0.10. That's what it ships with. So why are we building Node 20 to run SmartOS?
Internally. So
interesting.
I mean, SmartOS came from Joyent. So at one point it was like the main thing that they wanted to support. They're still interested. I will admit I prefer they were a little more active in the project. So if there is a problem, Brian's, and I forget his handle, but like we can say, hey, there's a problem on SmartOS and get him involved. But it does take more work to do that. I mean, I think what I'd say is like good example of a general problem. It's very easy for PRs to get bogged down and not get help, right? Mm-hmm. So if you know what to do, you've been in the project a long time, you know who to reach out to, you know there's a build working group, you can unstick your PRs. If you're submitting a PR that somehow gets stuck, or even sometimes like, I try to avoid this myself now, if you actually submit something as a draft and you want it early, don't do that, because it means that by the time you make it undraft, it's like way old. People don't notice it. Mm-hmm. You're better off like a brand new PR than that. Those are the ones that people see. And so that's the bigger problem is maybe, and I don't know how you solve that because it all comes down to people spending their own time. But it's easy to get a PR that basically gets stuck there and you're like, help. And like, well, nobody else cares, so they don't help, right?
I think, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I just have a quick question. Michael, you mentioned that we have tier 1, 2, and 3 support for platforms. But from what I see when I send a PR, if I get, let's say, a red on SmartOS, my PR will not be merged. So we're not actually having different tiers. We just support everything at the same level, right?
Well, that's not, yeah, you'd have to go back and read what the different tiers mean.
Mm-hmm.
But,
oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah, like definitely, if it's in our CI, it needs to pass, right, is basically the way that it is. You're right on that. Like, we don't say, hey, you can land it if it's red on, because then it's red forever, and like your CI is red. That just doesn't work, right?
Yeah, I think I remember the days of red CI, and it was a Herculean effort to make that actually green. And it's nice now that you can actually add a feature and add extensive tests to it, and all the systems do come back green. I will say that I think the hardest part is for me is if we have all this talk about new contributors and trying to get sustained contributors, and like Wes joked, like I don't have many PRs myself to the Node project. In fact, I don't even have, I think, the actual contributor role. Like I can't add labels or anything like that yet. I've been involved since 2016, and I've done things in Fastify and all this. There's that weird line of like, if the Node projects even wants contributors like myself to stay involved and be more consistent, we need to improve some of these processes. Tooling Group is probably the best place to do some of this, because that was the big driver originally to even get me doing that contribution was, let's do it, just ship it, and yeah.
I just realized I think we're very short on time here because it started late. Yeah, I think we're supposed to be wrapping up at 6, but I think we can stay a little longer, right?
Almost 6.
Yeah, almost 6.
Okay.
But
you mean the GitHub event like right next door? I think it's right supposed to be here.
I'd like to mention just on this subject of the introduction, we were talking about, what are the biggest hits from the group. My favorite one will definitely be the argument parser, right? Yeah. That one took forever, and I know not everybody was happy with the result, the outcome, but yeah, exactly, and that's a big yeah, me too, all the time now.
I need to use it more.
Yeah.
We're gonna start. Which major version did it land in?
Yeah. No.
Yeah,
it got backbordered. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think so.
I think so.
I'll say, as someone who's didn't work on it, it was a success from. I use it in all sorts of tools now. Obviously the CLI hasn't adopted it, but now if I'm writing, especially an internal tool or something that is, it's an amazing feeling to not have to reach for another package.
Yeah, I think the community aspect of it was a big hit. So writing samples too. Honestly, writing samples is just a joy now.
Has it landed in Yargs under the hood yet?
That I'm not sure. That I don't think so.
I thought that was the plan that Ben said.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Ben really lowered his open source contributions. So it's hard for him to be shipping that work now, right? But I think that's the plan. Yes. Okay. Yes, still the plan.
Another greatest hit. The test runner, loving that.
Yeah.
I see a lot of contributions landing on that. Every time I check it out, it looks like something new gets added, something new gets fixed. Loving to see that. Also loving that it's the tap API. And then we talk about there's the Semver is standardized, but it's not. Tap is standardized, but it's not. We have internal debates all the time, and I bet every other company does too, of Jest versus Mocha versus Ava and I'm I know, and I'm like, hey everyone, Node tap, and guess what? It's in core, and everyone's like, oh, okay, done. It's in core.
I don't want to get since we're running out of time, but just a question about that and in general, the tooling group. What is there anything documented for how far we want the test runner to go? Because as you mentioned, test runners are full of opinions and full of surface area, in my opinion. Where do you want it to automatically look at your changed files based on your Git status and run just on those, and how do you want coverage to work? And there's a lot of opinions there. Has there been discussion as how far should the Node built-in runner go? Oh, apologies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most limited version of this? Because when you're talking about usage, you're talking about argument parsing, you can go all the way, right? You can do basically crazy kind of very similar to test runners. Exactly.
Yeah. One thing about the test runner is that, sorry, now that we have the test runner, maybe we should expand the assert module a little bit, so we can catch up on all the assertion that you get in Node.js, for instance. So I'm not saying that we have to match the feature of Node.js because it's way beyond our scope, but at least having a similar assertion to T-compare or the dependency that you're using would help a lot for simple cases.
Is that a response?
I have a response, yeah. I would say like 100%. I look at the Node test runner at like tooling group perspective wise. I ain't planning on writing like large swaths of integration tests and end-to-end things using the built-in test runner. What I would love to do is write a new feature, throw in a couple unit tests on that, and call it a day. And then if I need to reach for the like craziness, awesomeness that is like Cypress or Node Tap itself, and do these, when I have 5,000 tests to run in parallel, I don't expect Node Test Runner to ever do that. But proof of concept or even my basic unit test coverage for a brand new feature, that's where I'm like, Node Test should be all I need. And so yeah, bringing some feature parity would be awesome. It's actually cool. Maybe if this is an opportunity for Node Tooling Group, in my team at Vercel, we actually did an internal comparison between a bunch of different test runners because we're trying to make this decision, and it turns out that there is not a crazy feature difference there's between things. So it'd be cool to maybe share some of those findings and be like, what can we do to bring up the Node test runner?
Yeah, maybe one word to say on feature parity. I think one thing what I would miss to switch to Node Runner immediately is the mocking capabilities or starting capabilities. Like I need to be able to say dependency XYZ, I want to have this stub in there, or this file should not be part of the test, I want to stub it out and mock the interfaces. If we can get this out, I think things like Vite and Jest, they all can be focused on browser testing more. And Node can be good for Node. And I think mocking and stubbing, that could be something that every Node developer just writing tests for Node platform could really use. And I'm not sure if there's already a tool for that. But I was talking to the Vite team, and they have open sourced a package for their mocking. But I think that works differently anyway.
But we can probably achieve that if we join the initiative for TypeScript support. Remember that providing the loaders API, a better loaders API to the interpreter, we can probably use the same API for mocking purposes. Before even you start the test, use that loaders to intercept your requests and mock them. Probably that might be a joint effort.
The loader is isn't even that main proposal for that you pass it as a command line flag at the start of the process. So you'd need to child process the test run,
of course,
which I don't think the current runner is doing. But I know a lot of the other runners do that.
Yeah, but nothing prohibits you to internally use your own API to provide mocking support. Even though the API is for another purpose, you can probably use the same one.
One more general question. What is, if it didn't come out of the tooling group, what's the best place for future discussions about the test runner? Is there a working group responsible for that, or is it just within PRs and Slack channels? Just a discussion about the current test runner. And
yeah, I think the current test runner, correct if I'm wrong, but I think the two collaborators I see more active on it is and Masha and Colin. Yeah, so I think reaching out to them directly, maybe getting them to sit down,
because I would be curious. We do a lot of very interesting test usage in the CLI, where we there's certain places where we broke Node Tap or it needed a fix in Node Tap because we are forced to overwrite the process object and overwrite process exit and test that, and then it's but Node Tap was already mucking with process exit because they need to know when the tests end, and we can get into edge cases, and I'm curious if I did experiment with that on the CLI, who could I reach out to?
Right. Yeah.
I'll break it.
Right, signal as it or something. Yeah.
What I know we're out of. I know. We can just chat until we go to the whatever the next thing is. Are there any other big tooling initiatives you wanted to highlight?
Well, I wanted to at least try to discuss something, other than the highlights. Like, if we don't get kicked out, right? Like, I think we can get.
You've got the next session, right? In this room?
Oh, so you're the next session. Sorry about that.
What's the next session?
HTTP.
Oh, I
Yeah.
do want to hear about that.
Yeah. So
the other thing is, are we gonna all miss the dinner? Because I think it's now.
Where?
there is a dinner now.
No, it says in the.
It's 5:30 to 7.
Right, and it's
Yep.
6.
and it's 6. So
Yep.
that's what I'm saying. If we're continuing here,
Yeah.
we are fully missing the dinner,
I'm gonna go just
and
because
people need to
it's mine.
eat, and it is your
I've never
company.
met before.
I'm just wondering what should why did they schedule it literally?
Why don't we
Yeah.
go
Okay.
over there and talk?
Yeah. In the light of learning that the speaker of the next next topic is here, so I think we should wrap up. But this was great. I think there is still interest for the group, right? Like, and the goal of running a session here was to kind of try to pick up interest again, right, and see if we can get an agreement on a date and time that works for everyone to kind of meet every once in a while, maybe just even if it's once a month or, but at least keep the group alive. I think that's, I think we did a lot of great stuff, and it's a good tooling it's a good group for onboarding people to the project, and doers, people that want to contribute, that want to do stuff. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say what I've learned from getting Winter CG up off the ground for the past year-ish, almost a year now, I think. It started last summer, is there is a balance between the organizational efforts and the contribution efforts. I think lowering the organizational efforts can actually let there to be more contribution efforts, in the sense of, like, don't ask me to come to a tooling group meeting every week. Don't ask me to come to one every other week either. Ask me to come to it maybe once a month, and you've got a good shot of me being there. But also create an issue, assign me the task, and that'll be like, let's go build the tool.
I asked you to come to MPMRCs every week, and you never showed up. So
Yeah.
now I know why.
Yeah,
But now
I
you know.
can't-
Now
I can't-
that's
I can't
just too
show up
much.
to too many
much.
meetings. So it's like, I think if we want to restart tooling group, like, again, I don't think I attended many tooling group meetings either, but the one or two times I do, it's like, let me make this as most effective. So
Yeah.
if we can turn those meetings into a once a month thing, that might give us some new success, because it's also super easy to attend one meeting one time.
Yeah.
Than trying to make it become, because everyone's busy. Everyone's got all the other meetings, and time zones are a mess.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Any suggestion, Wes?
No, I like that idea. I'm fine with that. I
Right.
would totally, I think, be able to carve out, a meeting once a month. I wanted to ask, this is sort of a change of topic. Is that all right? Or are we done? I wanted to ask if there's interest in interactive CLIs. We have
Right.
a parser. If we had a prompt implementation, we could make, I think a lot of things are moving to interactive CLIs because they make more sense to set up a workflow for people. I mean, even like NPM and init, right?
Yeah.
And the
More
current
approachable.
stuff that is in core is just incredibly unhelpful if you want to write a read line. Is like, I've done it, and it is like, whew, right? Not fun. I'm just wondering if the tooling group has any interest in doing something like pull in
Right. Pull it in Inquire. Yes. Yeah.
maybe, I don't know, or something, maybe not quite
Yeah.
that robust, but like
Yeah.
something. Because the only reason I'm still not using in my main CLIs that I maintain at Netflix, the only reason I'm not using the new arg parser is because the thing that I'm using wraps Yargs and Inquirer because it's a
Right.
interactive CLI.
Right.
And so when I want to make the change, but it would be weird to make the change for half of it, but then still be relying on Inquirer. It'd be really nice if I could like rewrap that whole thing on a just Node Core APIs.
I see.
I don't know if
Yeah.
I love the idea as well. I think that's as someone who maintains Vercel CLI, oh my gosh, I wish I could rip out our Inquirer and args parsing usage, because it's all, or like the Yargs usage, it's all old and messy, and I'm like, it makes me frustrated just thinking about it. So if I could like fix that and use something nicer in core and ditch some of those.
You can use my wrapper right now if you want. I have a thing, it's called Opta, and it basically takes the Inquirer API and the Yargs API and then munges them together.
Instead of 2 dependencies, you have 3.
You have like 12, but the idea is that it gets rid of probably the code you're complaining about that's messy. That's specifically what I wrote it for, because I was doing the create package stuff, and the idea is there's this weird thing where like you have defaults, and then you have this like I passed a command line flag, and that command line flag then it's an interactive CLI. So shouldn't that command line flag either make you not ask that question at all because you've already provided the input, or it should set the default to what you input and then you hit enter, right? Like there's these weird interactions, and I wrote all of that vanilla way, and I was like hellishly messy, right?
Let's
So
just finish create in the package maintenance working group, pick that up, finish it, and if there's pieces that fall out of that are like a dependency like the interactive CLI component, like then we standardize that, or we say that that's good, right? So let's finish one of the things that we started.
that's a good idea.
What are we finishing?
Create
PKG.
PKG.js, which actually will play into also the standardization effort for like, let's say the next year.
Right.
Would play into like, because what I think this group has been really good at, and it was kind of mentioned before a couple of people got out here, is actually like Christian, like we were really good at, and big up to Chris Hiller for also kind of kicking this off, like essentially going out and doing like analysis of the current ecosystem and saying, here's all the competitive analysis of all these different packages that do the same thing. Can we get something in core that like basically does the most minimal version of this thing? Yeah, get that minimum baseline thing. So you don't need maybe this more robust thing, but you can still use it if we're not trying to like cut people at the knees for their usage. Like they're still gonna offer something. Yargs is still gonna offer something on top of that. So like I would say let's go back to finishing that project, and then it plays into the PKG.js, and then if interactive CLI pops out of that, then we say, hey, like this could be add on to the argument parser.
Yeah. At
Right?
some point, I was planning on moving. Yeah, I like
This
that
next
idea.
year, this
I'd be happy
this
to
year, let's finish create. Let's do init, and we can do some standardization of brown package JSON all through those tools.
Yeah, I took notes. Yeah. So okay. All right. So let's wrap it up. But please, Wes, open an issue for the interactive
I
thing.
wasn't sure if people cared.
And I'm gonna follow along. You know, all of you try to see if we can schedule a recurrent meeting that we can all like. Yeah, something like monthly, or maybe even every 2 months if it's too much having it monthly. Let's see. Yeah, one. Okay.
We're going to have 5 meetings before.
Okay, thank you all. Now let's continue with the HTTP parser.